ceasefire, now 70% contained, with strong winds expected through Sunday. That could fuel the flames more.
Prosecutors in the Russia probe looming over the White House have obtained some 400,000 documents as they investigate former Trump campaign advisors Paul Manafort and Rick Gates, seen here. They have both pleaded not guilty to charges of money laundering and foreign lobbying.
Protests in Kiev after the former president of Georgia was detained Friday. Mikhail Saakashvili is accused of assisting a criminal group associated with Ukraine's former president, Viktor Yanukovych. It's actually the second time this week that Saakashvili was detained. Tuesday, supporters freed him from police custody by smashing the windows of a police car in which he was being held.
Well, it has been a long, rocky road since British voters decided to leave the European Union.
On Friday, though, negotiators from the UK and the EU wrapped up a phase one of these divorce proceedings. Despite all of that hard work, the toughest challenges are still to come, as our Aaron McLaughlin reports.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Do you have a deal?
After nearly 9 months of punishing negotiation, a breakthrough, something to make Theresa May smile, and the all clear from the European Commission.
The Commission has just formally decided to recommend to the European Council that sufficient progress has now been made on the strict terms of the divorce.
It's a deal many feared might never be done, especially after what happened in Brussels earlier in the week.
Some differences do remain, which require further negotiation.
May was forced to go home empty-handed after text aimed at settling what happens to the Northern Ireland border leaked to the press. Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, which holds the key to her government majority, nixed the agreement.
And we will not accept any form of regulatory divergence.
It took 4 more days of intense phone calls between Belfast, Dublin, London, and Brussels. Then, in the small hours of Friday morning, just enough progress, paving the way for a press conference unveiling a deal on the breakup. The issues that matter most to the EU. The financial settlement, rights for EU citizens in the UK and vice versa, and Northern Ireland. In the 15-page joint report outlining the agreement, the UK has made plenty of concessions on those issues, including on money, committing to a formula to pay the EU tens of billions of euros, and a role for the European Court of Justice to be able to weigh in on what happens to EU citizens. A red line for hardline Brexiteers who wanted to leave the EU to avoid the European courts.
But the whole thing's a humiliation.
But what's seen in Brussels as a diplomatic victory for Theresa May is also likely to be bittersweet.
We all know that breaking up is hard, but breaking up and building a new relation is much harder.
Friday's deal still needs to be approved here at the European Council in Brussels, something that seems likely. Then the focus shifts to the potential transition, something that the UK desperately wants to maintain the status quo for 2 years after Brexit, to give British business more time to adjust. EU officials already warning that that too will come at a high price. Aaron McLaughlin, CNN Brussels.
Well, let's talk more about Brexit and Friday's developments and where it goes from here. We're joined by Simon Usherwood, Deputy Director of UK in a Changing Europe. Simon, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
First of all, what do you think about what just transpired vis-a-vis Northern Ireland and the border, and Theresa May finally working to get this figured out?
Well, I think it's a really important development. I think it also highlights the difficult position that Theresa May has been in, that as the piece just now was saying, that the Conservative government relies on the Democratic Unionist Party for its majority in Parliament, and they were able to delay this agreement coming together during the week. So I think it's a good sign that the two sides have been able to find common ground, but there is an awful lot left to do if the UK is to get an agreement by the time that it's due to be leaving in March 2019.
Well, let's talk about what that common ground represents. I want to read to you something from the Irish Times. This is an opinion piece. It said, by standing firm against their attempts to bully, cajole, and blame it, Ireland has shifted Brexit towards a soft outcome. It is now far more likely that Britain will stay in the customs union and the single market. It's also more likely that Brexit will not, in fact, happen. What's your take on that opinion?
Well, there's a real tension here, isn't there? On the one hand, the UK says it will be fully aligned with those parts of the single market and the customs union that relate to the Good Friday Agreement that has brought peace to Northern Ireland in the past 2 decades. But at the same time, the document also clearly says that the UK will leave both the customs union and the single market. And I think what the government here is counting on is that alignment doesn't mean you actually have to be formally inside those arrangements. So you might be shadowing very closely, but you're just on the outside and you can have your own rules labelled as UK rules. And so that whole agenda of taking back control is something that the government is going to try and make the case it still has managed to achieve.
So the question is, hard Brexit, soft Brexit, we're not sure where this will go. Achieving Brexit has been likened to unbaking a cake. Nearly impossible or possible? What do you think in the big picture?
I think it is really difficult. I think what this is really showing is the way in which the European Union entangles states, not in a malicious kind of way, but just modern government, modern governance just brings together a whole range of different rules and regulations that entangle countries, and it's really hard to unpick that. The UK has been a member for over 40 years, and if you think about how much has happened in that time, all the rules that have built up, that to unpick that in even 2 years is a really hard task. And I think that the one thing that's clear is that this was a difficult deal to reach this week, but that was on the easier parts. That was about tying off some of the most critical issues. As we move into phase 2 in the new year, where we're talking about the new relationship, then there's going to be an awful lot more to be discussed, a lot more debates and disagreements.
Well, we will talk with you again for sure. Simon Usherwood. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Still ahead, there are new developments in the resignation of U.S. House member Trent Franks. The latest on the scandal ahead.
Plus, the NAACP puts out the not welcome mat for President Donald Trump.
There are new details coming to light about the scandal surrounding U.S. Senate Republican Trent Franks.
He admitted on Thursday he spoke to female staffers about surrogacy and said he would resign in January. But he now says he's resigning immediately amid new allegations. CNN's Sunlan Sarfati has the story.
There are new allegations and details to those allegations coming out against Congressman Trent Franks. I spoke to a confidant of one of the accusers who detailed her side of the story to this confidant. She says she was a former aide with the congressman and she was asked by the congressman to be a surrogate in exchange for money. The woman says she was asked to look over a contract to potentially carry his child, and if she conceived his child, she would be given $5 million. Now, this account comes from Andrea Lafferty. She's president of the Traditional Values Coalition, and she was in the room last week when she, along with the accuser, presented this side of the story to Speaker of the House Paul Ryan's office. And this, of course, was first detailed and reported by the Associated Press. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan quickly called for his resignation after a very swift condemnation. He called the charges very credible and very serious. Now, the congressman pushed up his deadline for his official resignation. He did that on Friday. Instead of resigning officially on effective January 31st, he resigned on Friday. So he is out. And Frank's publicly punting a bit to his family. He says that his wife was admitted to the hospital with an ongoing ailment. It's the best thing right now for the family to have him go and resign. But it was very clear up here on the call in the halls of Capitol Hill that there was just no appetite for him to stay a day longer. Sunlan Sarfati, CNN on Capitol Hill.
Well, in a matter of hours, the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum is set to open. Normally, that would be a cause for celebration, not controversy.
But protests may take place instead. This because the U.S. President Donald Trump will attend. The civil rights icon and U.S. Congressman John Lewis says he will skip that event, as will Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson. They call Mr. Trump's presence an insult. In a statement, the NAACP said this, quote, President Trump's statements and policies regarding the protection and enforcement of civil rights have been abysmal, and his attendance is an affront to the veterans of the civil rights movement.
Derrick Johnson is president and CEO of the NAACP, America's oldest civil rights organization. He's also the former president of the Mississippi chapter, and he spoke Friday to CNN's Kate Baldwin.
I will not be there tomorrow, and his attendance is a distraction from us having an opportunity to honor true Americans who sacrificed so much to ensure that democracy worked. It is unfortunate, in fact, it's an affront to those individuals who fought for voting rights to ensure that people had quality education and quality access to health care will be celebrated. Those are principles this president do not support. With his voting commission, he don't support open and fair elections to ensure that all citizens have the right to vote. He don't affect free, quality public education for all children. And his most recent attempt with tax reform show he don't support affordable, quality health care. That was the movement. That's why we're celebrating the individuals who sacrificed, and his attendance is an affront.
But it's important to point out Johnson's views are not universal. Here's Utah Congresswoman Mia Love.
I think if anybody should be going to civil rights museums and to learn about the suffering and I would say the triumph of Black Americans, it should be the White House, and I think that we should welcome that type of participation.
The White House calls the reaction to the president's attendance unfortunate.
Well, coming up here, we have one more for you. You know, this time of year, a lot of children are writing Santa Claus. Well, one child wrote quite a scathing letter. We'll share it with you next.
Israel. And there's also perhaps a sense that, yes, the two-state solution is dead. Negotiations at this point, you know, what chance do they actually have? What chance is there for this elusive peace that so many here will tell you that they do actually fundamentally want? Of course, wanting peace is one thing. The realities, the dynamics on the ground are something else. These are two populations, the Israelis and the Palestinians, that have grown up amid these tensions that do quite often erupt into violence. And for many, you also get a sense that they're actually exhausted, at least on the Palestinian side. They are exhausted by this back and forth that keeps happening time and time again with, at least for them, from their perspective, no positive resolution. In fact, no resolution at all to decades of grievances, George.
And important to point out, Arwa, you know, before this declaration by the U.S. president, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict really has not been at the fore, but it is certainly back at the forefront now, and we're seeing what people are doing, the reactions on the streets. Arwa Damon live for us in Bethlehem. Stand by. Let's bring in Ian Lee, who's also following the situation on the streets in Ramallah. And Ian, from what you're seeing, and to Arwa's point, is there a sense among people that you've spoken to that things are somehow different now?
Yeah, George, that's the one question we've been asking a lot of people is what is different about this time versus previous times? Of course, you had that major announcement by U.S. President Donald Trump declaring Jerusalem the capital of Israel. But really, we have ventured into the unknown. You talk to Palestinians and ask them, where does this go from here? A lot of them have told me that, frankly, they don't know. They think it could go a lot further. You know, you bring up the word or the phrase third intifada. That's something that Hamas in Gaza has called for. And people say, you know, it could happen, it could not happen. And that's the unknown. You know, where we are right now, we're expecting protests to come here again today. And this is where Thursday we saw some of the most violent clashes between the Israeli army and Palestinian protesters. This area behind me, there was just thick with black smoke, burning tires. There was tear gas filling the air as well as rocks. and a back and forth between the two sides. And it went on all day, and it was people were saying that they were out here to vent their frustration, and we're expecting that to happen. You know, we're told that protesters are going to start coming here in about an hour's time. And like Arwa said, there's protests planned in Bethlehem, there's protests planned here in Ramallah, in Jerusalem, really across the West Bank, across Gaza, and in Jerusalem. Palestinians don't seem ready to lay down their cause. They're continue to keep fighting for it, and that's what we're seeing today. And really, that's going to be the test, George. If they can keep up these protests on a daily basis, what will that pressure have? No one can really know, but it will have pressure on politicians in one way or another, George.
To both of you, we appreciate the reporting as you bring us a look at what's happening on the streets given this declaration by the U.S. president. The question again, will this day again turn into more clashes on the streets? Ian Lee, live for us in Ramallah. Arwa Damon in Bethlehem, thank you again for the reporting.
We turn now to Southern California. Thousands of firefighters working there nonstop to combat 6 wildfires. They made progress Friday containing 5 of the blazes. However, the largest inferno, the Thomas wildfire, grew to nearly 58,000 hectares or 143,000 acres. At least one person has died in a car crash while evacuating from that fire.
Just to compare it, Natalie, though, again, it's been compared to the size of Seattle and Orlando together, these fires, just massive fires that are taking place. Nearly 200,000 people have been forced to leave their homes since the fires started this week. Some have returned only to find those homes destroyed, and almost 14,000 in the area don't have power. CNN's Sarah Seidner is on the ground there and has this report.
New information from fire officials on the Thomas fire, the largest fire that's burning, which is 3 times now the size of Washington, D.C. They are now saying that 87,000 people have been evacuated. That's almost half the total number of people that have been evacuated across Southern California because of these fires. And here's why. This is just one home, but around us, there are within eyesight 20 homes that we can count that are burned to the ground. They look just like this, where basically the chimney is the only thing that is standing. Here is another vista, a view from atop Ventura, this neighborhood devastated by this fire. Home after home after home leveled to the ground, and many of the folks who live in these homes, the homeowners don't even know what their homes look like yet because they have not been able to make it back after evacuating, some of them with just the clothes in their back or with just a small bag, for example, their prescriptions. This has been such a difficult time for them and for the firefighters who are working double and triple shifts trying to knock this fire back, and it's still only 10% contained at this point. I do need to mention how many firefighters are battling this blaze, which is still raging in the hills. About 3,500 fire personnel, 21 helicopters that you have been seeing, of course, dumping water and trying to stop these blazes. I must say that when you watch the work they do, they are amazingly accurate with dumping that water, but the flames just too strong and they keep on rolling.
Wow. Derek Van Dam here with us now. And of course, these devastating fires follow the ones in recent weeks in the wine country.
That's correct.
Might have people in California thinking about where they live and thinking of the climate change situations that they're going to see in the next years.
This has been the costliest wildfire season in U.S. history, and that was as of 5 days ago before these fires started to burn in Southern California, already at $10 billion. And, of course, we have to calculate the devastation already from what's happening right now. Look at Thomas Fire. This is the overnight visuals from the Thomas Fire in Ventura County, and believe it or not, there has been some progress. It's at 10% containment right now, but this fire, just explosive growth, the rapid sheer movement of this system because of the Santa Ana winds and the extremely dry vegetation and some of the topography there, just making the recipe for disaster, obviously. But there was this narrow window of time when the Los Angeles County fire officials were able to get some of the helicopters and firebombing airplanes into the sky and accurately get in advance of some of the approaching fire fires within that area and help contain at least a number of the fires, especially to the south of where the Thomas fire is burning. That's the Lilac, Liberty, Skirball Creek, and Rye fires. All of them reporting some improvements, which is good news. But that doesn't mean the threat has diminished. We still have critical fire danger extending from Santa Barbara to Los Angeles and San Diego. About 20 million Americans live within this red flag warning zone, and that means that timberbox conditions continue for the area. There was a brief lull in the strong Santa Ana winds. They relaxed a bit, but look at our computer models going forward into the rest of the day today, gusting to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour, then picking up once again as we head into the day on Sunday. And to make matters worse, we're going to take out the available moisture out of the atmosphere and see those relative humidity values drop into the single digits. We had a smoke plume from the Thomas fire extend 1,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean. That's equivalent to New York to Miami. Unbelievable stuff. Air quality index, you can imagine, going downhill for Southern California as we speak. I got to show you this picture. This is from Galveston, Texas, on the Gulf Coast. Snowmen. They had to use a seashell to put on the mustache and the smile there. We have winter storm warnings, advisories, and watches for nearly 70 million Americans as we speak. And this beautiful cat you're about to see now got to get outside and enjoy it. 6 inches of fresh snow. That is Kuro the cat, and he is 6 months old, and he is loving it in Birmingham, Alabama.
Because he matches it.
Because he matches it. Where'd he go? Everybody loves a cat in the snow, right?
Sure, why not?
Awesome, right. Derek. Thank you. You're welcome, guys.
Thanks so much. Well, coming up here, it's been tough to get to Friday's breakthrough in the Brexit negotiations, and it's still just the beginning of the divorce proceedings. This is coming. That means Santa is receiving thousands, millions of letters as he makes his list and checks it twice.
Some are exciting letters, some are, well, like the letter from this 6-year-old Santa skeptic who had a list of complaints. Here's CNN's Jeannie Mose with that.
Merry Christmas. A lot of kids are scared of Santa.
Oh, sweetie, come on. Look, you can pull it.
But maybe Santa should be scared of the kid who wrote this letter to him. We took the liberty of adding the voice.
Santa, I'm only doing this for the class. I know your naughty list is empty, and your good list is empty, and your life is empty. You don't know the trouble I've had in my life. Goodbye.
Give that kid the boot. Might be a bad Santa's reaction, but a good Santa understands.
There's a lot of rejection in this job.
NPR reporter and mother, Sarah McCammon, posted the letter saying, "My 6-year-old Santa skeptic was told to write a letter to Santa at school, so he did. Mom didn't want to do an interview, so all we have is the now gone viral letter, which ends,
Love, I'm not telling you my name.
If there's a Hall of Fame for Santa letters, this one goes in it. Your life is empty. You don't know the troubles I've had. Future country songwriter, tweeted one admirer. Noted his mom. P.S. The troubles in his life? His brother. Don't call child services. The letter is adorned with jolly wreaths on one side and skulls on the other. Sure, Santa's used to misspellings that turn him into Satan. This 4-year-old is now 13 and went on to win spelling bees. But it was the bleak nihilism, along with the misspellings,
I know your naughty list is empty,
that put this on the best Santa letters list. It was compared to the movie Elf.
You sit on a throne of lies.
As if Santa is nothing but an empty suit.
and your life is empty.
Jeannie Mose.
I'm not telling you my name.
CNN. New York.
Good that he didn't sign it, so maybe Santa will still give him something to pep him up.
He needs something
Beat
to
up
pep
on his
him up.
brother, maybe like a weapon.
A smile is not a bad thing, you know? All right, so we end this hour with a story about the Canadian tennis star Eugenie Bouchard. She agreed to a date with a college student, this after losing a Super Bowl bet on Twitter. So a few months ago, she and John Gerke went to a basketball game, and now, we'll take a look. Looks like they're still in touch. In 2014 Wimbledon finalist, she tweeted this.